Welcome back to the Apex Business Advisors podcast. I'm your host, Andy Kavanaugh, joined as always by the president of Apex, Doug Hubler. Doug, special day today. We are getting the band back together. You and Valerie did a presentation a few days ago at the EPI chapter meeting. And given that that's a lot of the topic that we're on, thought that it would be good for us to redo that and have you guys walk through your PowerPoint and your presentation. So with that, you guys take it away. I will interject with some questions that came up or some discussion points as relevant. So without further ado, Doug Hubler and Valerie Vaughn, bridging the gap.
That's an awesome introduction. Let me just say that the presentation was very well received. I think we're going to be getting some kind of award for that. And but we wanted to share that with a broader audience because it was so meaningful, so important. The topic is so. Valerie, we're going to run this like we did at the show with that huge audience. So why don't you get it going?
Okay, well, we're talking about aligning owner goals and what's happening in the market, and we have a few learning objectives for today's presentation. We want to understand sort of the various types of goals that business owners have as they think about the value and how that impacts their decision to exit. We want to talk about some common misperceptions. Business owners frequently value their business differently than the market does. So what are some of those misperceptions? And then since we have a group of advisors here who work with business owners, let's look at some practical techniques to bridge the gap between what owners are thinking and what the reality is thinking. The market is rethinking. And then finally, we want to talk about the role of the M&A intermediary, Apex Business Advisors. Where do we fit into the Exit Planning Institute's process? Doug, I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, this is basically what do we want to call this? This is the method, this is the plan, this is kind of the outline of the EPI method. And I think one of the things that we recognize right away is that as M&A advisors, we are typically brought in at the very end at that decide third of this chart, whether a business owner is going to keep it or sell it after a bad week or a bad month, or they went on vacation, they went to Italy and decided to come back, they want to sell the business, and they call us and say, I'd like to sell the business on Monday. So we need to avoid that situation at all costs. And so this presentation kind of is why we need to be brought in earlier.
Yeah, we ask a few questions in the discover that fit into the discover phase that a SEPA might ask, but not a lot. And that's where SEPAs really ask a lot of questions. But the EPI suggests that owners get early valuations of their company and then keep checking in at regular intervals to understand how the value is being impacted by their actions. And we can help sort of in the prepare phase by offering a broker's opinion of value as a baseline and as a monitoring point. So let's look at some of the types of goals that owners have for their exit.
So on the first part, the financial goals, of course, they're looking at their retirement, what they need in their nest egg. Are they going to be traveling? Are they, do they have a particular pride in what they are ending up with at the sale? Is it more about a particular number? Are they looking to buy another business? So we're looking at various types of business and personal financial goals that we really need to understand before getting into the process. Legacy is another big one. What are they planning on leaving to family? What are they leaving to employees? They typically care quite a bit about the culture that they've built and what's going to happen to all that. And are they leaving it to family, or are they bringing in somebody who's going to take care of that business they built up over 10, 20, 30 years, whatever. And it might be multi-generational. So something that we need to take into consideration.
And sometimes legacy may speak to something as simple as the business owner knows that they've built something that took them a long time to get to a level of success, and they want it to be moving into the future. They don't want to shut it down.
Emotional, it's an interesting one because, as a goal, emotional, it can be related to, like I'd mentioned before, is that business, are they burned out? They're just not excited anymore? They're moving on. Emotions drive a lot of the decisions, and obviously some reasons why deals fall apart. Emotions can change over time, maybe lack of commitment at some point, and there's ego involved in the business, and understanding the goal they have. It goes back to financial. They think their business is worth 10 million because they've built this marvelous business. And we sometimes have to come in and check those egos and bring them back to reality. But, talking about their personal situation, what they've accomplished over their lifetime, and it's a measure of success when they sell their business for a certain dollar amount, or they're able to sell it at all. So emotions are really a driving force here.
Then we were presenting to a group of advisors, accountants, attorneys, consultants, and we asked what other types of goals they had heard. Because we know this list is not comprehensive. Every deal is different, and every business owner seller is different.
One thing that was brought up during that conversation is, and it's perhaps a combination of these three, but the unexpected is a goal. So if somebody is, just as we would prepare a will well in advance of being on our deathbed because if accidents happen, preparing the business for sale, um, in the event that the owner becomes unable to operate the business, whether that's for a disability or for, in the extreme case, death,
Right.
is also one of the, not necessarily if we're there right now, or we're looking down the road for selling, but that preparation of the unexpected occurring, for those people that are well down the road.
Yeah, and I think another one that people obviously think about is time. As a goal, is this immediate? Is this 2 years from now? How does it match up with their ultimate, is the retirement situation, whatever it is? But time is a huge factor in deals. So understanding where they're at on the timeline is really important.
Okay, want to engage our audience in a little bit of a guessing game. Let's talk about market realities. We'll show a few. Is it the truth or is it a myth? Here is the first thing we often hear from business owners. They want a quick sale.
So we can shortcut this and say myth, right? Let's
What
just say
about the people who come in on a Friday and want to sell their
yeah.
next week?
It is interesting that we've had people who think that we are kind of the eBay or Facebook marketplace of business transactions, and it doesn't work that way. So we have to put a kibosh on that kind of thinking. It takes time, even on the best business with cash sale. It's going to take time.
Hey, sometimes business owners aren't really clear on how their business will be valued. And is it a multiple of revenue?
Myth. Let's
Bzz.
just say generally it's a myth. There are going to be different industries, and maybe somebody's realistic at one times revenue because they've got a 30% margin or something, 40% margin, then yeah, a one times revenue may be possible. But I think when you start hearing, hey, I heard my business is worth three times revenue, we are going to probably say, let's check that. That's most likely inaccurate.
Hey, will the seller get all cash at close? They think they will.
Yeah, and I guess that's a maybe,
It
right?
depends.
It maybe. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
we've had some deals closed that are all cash for sure, but I think business owners need to go in prepared that there's going to be some financings, probably some seller financing, maybe some earn out. We obviously are trying to get them all cash at close. That's the goal. And the closer we get to that, the better. And if we find the perfect strategic buyer that comes in with all cash, great.
I think that some of the discussion the other day addressed the fact that the kind of the further out a business owner starts thinking about their exit and planning to have their business ready to sell, the higher the probability is that they will get all cash at close.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of our presentation. I think that, in the education. So
Okay, let's try another.
next.
Let's see, common perception that business owners will be asked to transition for 1 to 3 years with the new owner, the buyer. Truth or myth?
Generally not accurate. I think we're probably most of the deals that we are involved with, even if they're larger, that business owner is going to be out of that business within that first year. It could be 90 days, 120 days on maybe a larger, maybe more technical deal. If the owner is a key driver of the business and it's very technical, they may be asked to stay on longer. But I think the vast majority of our transactions, the owner's out within the first 3 months.
I think where this one becomes a truth is that when private equity oftentimes is the buyer, and there's some sort of earnout that is part of the deal structure, was part of the
Right.
conversation that we had, to where the owner is not necessarily looking to exit the business right now, but they do have an interest in sticking around, and helping grow the business and helping the business achieve another level of success. Um, so I think that's where the conversation in the room turned to, well, it could be truth, could be myth. Of course, all of these are dependent, all results vary, right? Individual results
Sure.
vary on all of these, but there are cases where, depending on who your buyer is, this may be truth.
And
Yeah.
there was someone in the back who asked the rest of us at the meeting, how many times we had seen business owners sign on for a longer transition and either ask to leave or be asked to leave sooner than the agreed upon time frame. And that does happen.
Yeah.
Staying
And I
on with a
think that
business in a
what
different role can be challenging.
right, and kind of what Andy brings up here, if we're dealing with an earnout, a lot of times the business owner will want to stay around to achieve that earnout. There's a common goal there to hit some numbers. So the seller may want to be involved for a while longer. So
Okay. So these are our most common ways that we align misperceptions with reality. Doug, you want to cover this slide?
so the education, obviously, big part of where we're involved and any of our partners, advisors would want to be involved is educating the business owner on what drives value in the business, industry type, trends in the industry, trends in the business. We're looking at financing, the world of financing, banking, interest rates. Is there customer concentration issues? Are there key employees that aren't going to stay with the business? Is it all the key employees are family members and they're all going to be leaving? All these kinds of things impact value. So for us, we need to go in and early on and explain what are all the different things that may be a big factor on the value of the business, why it's not worth what the business owner thinks it is worth, but we can tell them why. And hopefully they can make some changes while they're planning the exit.
Well, storytelling, we use a lot of stories as we're going through that education process. And I think most of us at Apex have years of experience of developing stories. So we have a lot of those to tell. And then, Doug, the phrase that you say, I think very frequently, I love, is that in the end, the numbers have to work.
Right, right. And that's part of telling the stories, because we've done hundreds and hundreds of transactions over the years, so that we're able to share why deals didn't work, why deals fell apart, why the business owner didn't get what they thought they were going to get. And so those are very impactful because of all of our experience and all the folks here have been here for years and years and years doing deals. So the numbers do have to work. It has to pay for debt service, because we're going to assume that there's going to be debt on every single deal. When somebody says they're paying cash for a business, most likely there's some financing behind it somewhere. So there's going to have to pay off debt, or there's got to be a certain amount of return for that investor. Has to have working capital in the business, and it has to pay a salary for the buyer or buyers. So if the numbers, when you put those numbers together and say, okay, somebody's going to have $1 million a year in debt service and salary and cash in the business, you're not going to get, 20 million for your business. It's going to have to be a reasonable amount so that the numbers work, right? So we go through that math every time.
So, and I think there was another thing that came up during the course of this conversation, and that was that the education, the storytelling, the numbers having to work. There's also the business operations side of that. And there's certain things that regardless of if your numbers work, your numbers could work fantastic, but if you've got 80% of your revenue coming from one customer, there's not a world that you're going to get where you can sell that business for the amount that you think it's going to get. So there was some operational type things that we had discussion in there as far as customer concentration and key employee concentration, and several others that we've discussed here. But those were some of the alignment techniques as well, that in addition to these things that got brought up during the conversation in the room.
Yeah, so the last thing that we wanted to do with this audience, as we talked about aligning business owners' expectations with reality, was go through a case study. Pretty simple. A business owner values their company at 10 million based on their emotions. They put a lot of time and effort into building this business, but the market keeps saying, hey, this business is worth 6 million. So what do we do? We had a great discussion around this.
Take the listing. Sorry.
Take the listing.
We can, or you can take the listing and end up with a very frustrated seller who thinks that we're doing a poor job because we can't get them 10 million, when in reality, nobody's interested in an overpriced business. Or we can take the listing and keep bringing them buyers and showing them that the offers they're getting are closer to 6 million.
Yeah, and sometimes that works because sometimes it takes, 10 LOIs to present to a business owner. They're all in that 6 million range. And I think they finally start to get it, and they either decide, okay, we're going to move forward, or I've got to go back and it's going to take me 1 or 2 more years to develop this business the way I need to because I still want 10 million. Andy, were
Again,
there other comments on
Yeah,
that?
I think a couple of the notes that we took is that there were two main schools of thought. One was and they both kind of ended up at waited out. So one school of thought was you don't market the business, you educate and tell the you work with the business owner to get their metrics to where their business can command what they need, which may be if today is the day that you need to sell it, today, air quotes, is what you need to sell it. Here's what it will sell for. Putting it on the market and letting it sit out there and not get realistic offers for a year is not going to achieve your time bound goal. If you have a time bound goal, here's what it will be today. The other school of thought was if that goal is not time bound, but they're just assuming that, hey, I can get 10 million for it, is that there is kind of the wait and see approach that you do put it out on the market, whether you put it on the market with no asking price or you put it on the market with the price that you have, and then you report the activity or lack thereof. You report the LOIs at the 6 million range instead of the 10 million range. Those were really the two primary schools of thought.
Mhm.
And of course, there was a third of ultimately it's each individual practitioner's decision whether they want to take something like that and follow one of these approaches or opt not to take the engagement.
well, I think the discussion also led all of us to talk about how if a business owner plans to exit, they're less likely to end up at this sort of gap. And it brought us back to the Exit Planning Institute's process, which we saw at the beginning of this presentation. And Doug, where do we fit in?
Thank you for bringing that up, Valerie. That's a great question.
Planted question.
That's so. And after reviewing this with everyone, I think everybody really agrees that if we're brought in at the very beginning when a financial advisor or some other professional advisor for that company hears some of those key words about thinking about retirement or their health issues or whatever it is that might end up being, I'm going to need, ultimately, this business is going to need to sell. We need to be brought in at the very early stages so that we can give them an idea of what their business is worth today. And we're giving them an opinion, a market opinion, because of all of our experience. And this most likely at this stage won't be a certified valuation, but we can come in and say, we can give them a real close range and say your business is probably worth, $5 to $6 million based on what you've told us so far, and give them some key things that they may not need to work on if they want to get it up to that 10 million range. So, obviously we're just throwing out some basic numbers, but if we're brought in early, then we can work as a team with that business owner and other advisors to ultimately reach the goal that the business owner has, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road, doesn't matter, but we need to plan. The most successful deals that we've ever done have been when the business owner has brought us in early and we've been able to advise them along the way, along with their other partners. And it makes the business more valuable. It makes it more marketable. It becomes like hitting the easy button when it goes to market. And that's what we're always looking for, is trying to make that process easier for the business owner and the buyers. They're wanting to look at these businesses as they are ready to go. Their due diligence planning is in place, and it is a very marketable business at that point.
Well, and I think that was something too that was brought up in the conversation. You mentioned due diligence. Due diligence is expensive for a buyer. Due diligence is expensive for a buyer to perform and to pay their professionals to do. So there's oftentimes where they will not engage because they'll look at some high level financials, they'll look at some financial operations, and they're like, this is going to be messy, this is going to be costly, and I don't know that we're going to get to a yes here. So we'll just pass up here at the beginning and save ourselves these costs.
The question that we got at this point was that I liked the most was, how do we engage you? At which point Doug so wisely said, call us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I thought it was and that was a pretty layup question that maybe I didn't think it was a layup question, but we like to call us. We have phone numbers.
We have email
we
addresses.
also have email. You can text us, right? Lots
Not
of
to
ways to
these
get a hold of
numbers.
us.
They can text us, but not to these numbers.
Andy, how do they get a hold of us?
The best way, actually, I feel like getting a hold of us is to go to our website, kcapex.com. That's where you're going to find everything you need to know about buying or selling a business, including how you, as a business owner, could get involved with the Exit Planning Institute and how we can introduce you to a team of people that can make your exit more smooth and more profitable. The best way you do that is you go to the About Us section on our website. You go to the Contact Us and you select Andy Kavanaugh. There's a little email button. There's a LinkedIn.
That is one option.
That
One
is
of maybe 15.
the option. I actually talked to our webmaster, and they disabled everyone else's email links, so mine is the only one that works.
Very smart. Very
Very
smart.
sly.
Thank you guys for your for doing this presentation and for the time you spent putting together and presenting to the folks from the EPI. As an audience member that did not get to ask my planted question because there was quite a bit of interest in questions from the audience. I did hear some people as they were leaving say that was a really good presentation, and so I really think that we gave some people some food for thought. So kudos to you guys for putting together such a well presented presentation.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so I appreciate you doing an encore of it for our audience.
And thank you, Valerie, for putting this all together. First, appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's always good to help educate those who, get business owners ready sooner.
There you go.
Yeah.
We will see everyone next week. If you're looking at buying or selling a business, we got you, fam.
Call us.